I never thought walking home from school could scar me for life. It was supposed to be just another night of studying late, another night of preparing for exams, another night where I convinced myself I was being productive. But what I experienced that night, it never left me. It's been years since it happened, but when I close my eyes, I can still hear the dragging footsteps, still feel the cold sting of that presence, still see her shadow stretching out beneath the streetlights. I'm not exaggerating when I say this. If I let my mind wander too far, if I allow myself to remember too much, it's like I'm right back there again, trapped in that endless walk home from hell. It started out normal. Exams were a week away, and our school had this arrangement where the library would stay open until midnight so students could prepare. My house was just a short walk from the school, about 15 minutes if I walked at a steady pace. Normally I'd head home around 7 or 8, but that night I got carried away with my notes. I was buried in textbooks, highlighting, scribbling, cross-referencing things. When I finally checked the time, it was 10:07 p.m. I remember blinking at my phone, surprised because the library was unusually quiet. Even during exams, there were always a few students around. But that night it was just me and the faint hum of the old ceiling fans. The silence pressed in on me in a way I didn't notice until I started packing up. I stacked my books, zipped up my bag, and slung it over my shoulder. The sound of the zipper closing was oddly loud in the empty space. That was the first moment I felt it, the awareness that I was alone. Completely, utterly alone. The library's corridor stretched on forever at night. Long, pale walls, glass display cases on one side, classrooms on the other. During the day, the corridor felt ordinary, even boring. But that night, as I stepped out of the library, the silence made it feel wrong. My footsteps echoed far too loudly. I could hear them bouncing off the walls like someone was following close behind me. I walked faster, not wanting to look back. My mind told me it was just the acoustics, but my gut screamed otherwise. Halfway down the corridor, I noticed something. At the very end, right where the exit door was, someone stood. A woman. I froze. She was facing me, but I couldn't make out her face. The light above her flickered, buzzing, throwing her in and out of shadow. My skin prickled. She wasn't moving, just standing there, perfectly still, like she'd been waiting for me. "Hello?" I called out, my voice shaky. The words barely left my mouth before she was gone. Not walked away. Not turned around. Just gone. The hallway was empty again, except for me and my pounding heart. I didn't even try to rationalize it. I bolted for the exit, shoving the door open so hard it slammed against the wall. The cold night air hit me, and for a brief moment I felt relief. At least I was outside. But the street was wrong. Our school sits along a fairly busy road. Even at night, there are usually cars passing by, people heading home from shops, a group of boys hanging out by the tea stall. But that night it was silent, empty. The entire stretch of road was deserted, as though someone had erased the world. The streetlights glowed a sickly yellow, humming faintly, their light pooling on the cracked pavement. I tried to convince myself maybe it was later than I thought. Maybe everyone had gone home, but deep down I knew better. Something wasn't right. I pulled my bag strap tighter across my chest and kept my eyes on the ground, telling myself if I just kept walking, I'd be home in no time. It happened when I was only a few minutes away from my house. The first thing I noticed was my shadow stretching out ahead of me on the streetlight. But then, another shadow appeared. It was long, twisted, moving unnecessarily. It stretched across the ground and merged with mine even though there was no one else near me. Breath caught in my throat. As if against my will, I lifted my head. It was there. A woman from the corridor, walking ahead of me, her hips uneven, her body jerking slightly with each limp. Her hair hung over her face in tangled strands, her clothes torn and filthy, her arms and legs at odd angles, like they had been broken and never healed properly. I stopped dead in my tracks. My instincts said at me not to get close, but the street was narrow, and if I wanted to go home, I'd have to pass her. Mind raced with excuses. Maybe she was just a beggar, maybe she was injured, she needed help. But none of those excuses explained why she vanished from the school corridor only to appear. I took one step forward. The sound of her grew louder, dragging against the ground. I couldn't overtake her. I couldn't move past. I couldn't even breathe. I don't know how long I stood frozen, but then she stopped walking. Not turning around, she spoke. Her voice was hoarse, broken, my lips scraping against my own. "Have you seen my dog?" The word sent ice straight through my veins. I didn't either. I couldn't. My tongue felt like a bone in my mouth. "Tell me," I rasped again, louder this time. "Have you seen her?" Something inside me snapped. I raised my arm and pointed. Anywhere down the street. "Over there," blurted out. The woman tilted her head slowly, unnatural, as if it didn't quite work right. Then, without another word, she began to limp in the direction I'd pointed. I watched her figure grow smaller and smaller until it disappeared into the darkness. The relief was short-lived. The moment gone, I ran. I don't even remember my feet touching the ground. My only thought was to get home, get away, get inside somewhere safe. But just when I thought I was in the clear, her scream shattered the night. "She's here." The voice was so loud, so shrill, it felt like it came from everywhere at once, from the street, from behind me, from inside my skull. I stumbled, my vision blurred, and the next thing I remember, everything went black. When I woke, I was in my room. My neighbor sat beside my bed, looking worried. He told me he'd found me unconscious on the road not far from my house. He carried me home. I tried to explain what I'd seen, but the words stuck in my throat. My neighbor shook his head and said, "Don't think too much about it. That place has stories. People say it's haunted." Later, I asked around. In 1998, a woman named Agatha lived near the school. She had a daughter who studied there. One day while playing, the girl died in an accident. Agatha never recovered. She walked the street asking strangers if they had seen her daughter. Some say she died in grief. Others say she killed herself. People still see her. Being broken, I think that would be the end of it. That maybe I just hallucinated or imagined things because of stress and exhaustion, but it wasn't. Even now, sometimes I walk home and hear it, the dragging step, the and once, just when I went to look behind me, I swear I saw a shadow stretching across the pavement, twisted, wrong, and I know deep down she's still looking, and maybe one day she'll realize. Looking for her dog anymore. She's looking for me. I used to think the walk was the safest part of my day. It was the route I come from. I'd take the same route, past the same shops, wave at the same old shopkeeper who always sat outside his tiny. It was predictable, but routines can be you. Familiar places into something unrecognizable, and the very path you've walked your whole life can turn into a nightmare that won't let you go. It started one evening after school. I stayed later than usual for group study. The air was still warm, the sun just dipping under the horizon. The sky was painted in streaks of orange and purple, the kind of sunset that makes everything glow for a few minutes before darkness swallows it. My friends and I finally packed up and left, laughing about exam stress, promising to meet early the next morning. We all parted ways one by one until I was the only one left on the road. I wasn't worried. I had walked this road alone more times than I could count. The shops were closing, but there were still a few people out, cars passing by. Nothing strange, but as I walked further, the sounds of life faded one by one. The first thing I noticed was the silence. No chatter from the tea stall, no clatter of dishes from the small restaurant on the corner. Even the sound of traffic seemed to vanish. The air grew heavier with each step, thick and stifling. By the time I realized how quiet it was, I couldn't hear anything at all. No dogs barking, no leaves rustling, not even my own footsteps. It was like the world had been muted. I stopped walking and looked around. The street looked the same, but it felt wrong. The shadows stretched longer than they should have, and the dim light from the street lamps flickered faintly, like they were struggling to stay alive. My chest tightened with unease, but I forced myself to keep going. Home wasn't far. Just 10 more minutes. Then I saw her. At first I thought it was just another pedestrian, a woman walking a few meters ahead of me. She moved slowly, her head bowed, her hair falling forward to cover her face. But something about her posture seemed unnatural, stiff. Her arms hung oddly by her sides, her fingers curled inwards like claws. Her steps were uneven, dragging as though one of her legs didn't work properly. I quickened my pace, planning to overtake her and leave the weirdness behind. But no matter how fast I walked, I couldn't seem to catch up. The space between us stayed the same, as though the road itself was stretching. My breaths grew shorter, my pulse racing. Sweat slid down my back, but the air was freezing now, each inhale biting into my lungs. Finally, she stopped. My relief lasted only a second before dread clawed its way up my throat. She began to turn, slowly, painfully. Her neck twisted first, bending at an unnatural angle before her shoulders followed, and then I saw her face. Her skin was pale, sagging as if it had been left too long in water. Her eyes were sunken, rimmed with darkness, but they locked onto mine with a hunger that made my stomach drop. Her lips were cracked, torn at the edges, and when she smiled, I saw blood between her teeth. I froze. My legs wouldn't move. My brain screamed at me to run, but my body refused. She opened her mouth wider, as though she was about to scream, but no sound came out, just silence, thick and heavy. Then, without warning, she raised her hand and pointed directly at me. That was enough. Something inside me broke free and I bolted. My footsteps slammed against the ground, echoing louder than they should have in the dead silence. I didn't look back, didn't care where I was running as long as it was away from her. My lungs burned and every nerve in my body screamed for me to stop, but I couldn't. I felt her behind me. I didn't see her, but I knew she was there. The road twisted, unfamiliar now. Houses I knew like the back of my hand looked strange, their windows dark, their doors closed tight as if the people inside had abandoned them. I ran past the shop where the old man usually sat, but his chair was empty, rocking slightly as though someone had just left it. I tried to scream for help, but no sound came out of my throat. Just silence. I don't know how long I ran, but eventually my legs gave out. I collapsed against a wall, gasping for air. The silence was still there, suffocating, pressing in from every side. My ears rang with the absence of sound and panic bubbled up inside me. I slammed my palms against my ears, desperate for anything, any noise, even my own heartbeat. But there was nothing. That's when I saw her again. Standing at the end of the street, perfectly still, her head tilted, watching me. My body went cold. I scrambled to my feet, stumbling, forcing myself forward. I didn't know where I was anymore. The streets twisting, stretching, unfamiliar. No matter how many turns I took, she was always there, ahead of me, waiting. At one point, I turned a corner and came face to face with her. She was inches away, her breath cold against my skin. Her eyes bored into mine, and for the first time I heard her voice. A whisper, low and broken. "Why did you leave me?" I didn't understand. My lips trembled as I tried to speak, but no words came. She leaned closer, her hair brushing my cheek, her whisper cutting into my ear. "You should have stayed." I shoved past her, sprinting blindly. My vision blurred with tears, my throat raw from silent screams. The streets twisted again, and finally I saw my house. The lights were on, glowing warmly through the windows. Relief washed over me so hard I nearly collapsed again. I threw myself at the door, fumbling with the handle, shoving it open. The moment I stepped inside, sound returned. The hum of the refrigerator, the creak of the wooden floor under my feet, the ticking of the clock on the wall. The silence outside was gone, like it had never existed. I slammed the door shut and locked it, leaning against it as my body shook uncontrollably. My parents came rushing in asking what was wrong, but I couldn't explain. I just kept shaking, muttering, "She was there. She was there." I didn't sleep that night. Every creak of the house made me jump. Every shadow felt alive, and when I finally drifted into a half-sleep near dawn, I dreamed of her face, wet, pale, smiling with bloody teeth. The next day, I convinced myself it was stress, exhaustion, my brain playing tricks. I avoided telling anyone at school, but I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Every time I walked home, I felt her. In the corners of my vision. In the flicker of shadows under streetlights. Sometimes I swear I hear her whisper again, faint and broken. "Why did you leave me?" Weeks later, I learned something I wish I hadn't. There had been an accident years ago on the very road I walked every day. A girl had been walking home late just like me. A car hit her, dragged her, left her broken on the pavement. People said she was waiting for her mother, but her mother never came. By the time anyone found her, it was too late. They said the girl's spirit still wandered the road, searching for someone, waiting. And I think she chose me even now. Years later, I can't walk home after sunset. If I do, I feel it start again. The silence, the emptiness, the wrongness in the air. And when I close my eyes, I see her face inches from mine, whispering the words that will haunt me for the rest of my life. "Why did you leave me?" I used to think nothing bad could happen in my neighborhood. It was one of those quiet places where people left their doors unlocked. Kids played cricket in the streets until sunset, and everyone knew everyone. It wasn't perfect, but it felt safe. That illusion shattered the night I decided to take the long way home. It was late summer, the kind of night when the air feels heavy and restless, thick with humidity. I had stayed after school for a project meeting, and by the time I finally left, the sun had disappeared. The fastest way home would have been through the main road, bright with shops and restaurants. But that night, for reasons I can't explain, I took the back streets instead. Maybe I wanted some peace and quiet. Maybe I was just tired of the crowds. I regret that decision more than anything else in my life. The alley was darker than I remembered. Streetlights flickered weakly, their glow swallowed by the shadows. Trash littered the pavement and the air smelled faintly of rot. Still, I told myself it was fine. It wasn't far. I'd be home soon. My footsteps echoed, a little too loud, bouncing off the walls of shuttered shops and crumbling buildings. Halfway down the alley, I heard something, a faint scrape like metal dragging against concrete. I froze, the sound stopped. My pulse hammered in my ears, but I forced myself to keep walking. Probably a stray cat, I told myself. Just a stray cat knocking something over. But the sound came again. Longer this time. A slow, deliberate scraping. I turned my head, scanning the shadows. The alley was empty. Or at least it looked empty. The hair on the back of my neck stood on end. Every instinct screamed at me to leave, but my legs kept moving, faster now, almost jogging. The scrape followed. I broke into a run. My bag slammed against my back, my breath ragged. But no matter how fast I moved, the sound kept pace with me. Scrape, 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 like something dragging itself closer. At the end of the alley, I skidded to a stop. A woman stood there, blocking my path. Her body was twisted, hunched unnaturally, her arms dangling limply at her sides. Her hair hung in a matted curtain, hiding her face. And in her right hand, she held something long and sharp, an iron rod, its end scraping against the ground. The sound I'd been hearing. I stumbled back, my chest heaving. She didn't move, didn't speak, just stood there, head tilted as though studying me. Then slowly she raised the iron rod and dragged it across the wall beside her. The screech of metal against brick pierced the air, making me flinch. I turned and bolted the other way, deeper into the maze of alleys. My mind screamed at me to think, to find another way home, but the streets twisted in ways I didn't recognize. Corners that should have led to familiar roads opened into unfamiliar dead ends. Graffiti I'd never seen before covered the walls, symbols I couldn't understand. It was like the neighborhood had reshaped itself, trapping me inside. Everywhere I turned, I heard it scrape, 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 sometimes behind me, sometimes ahead, sometimes right beside me when no one was there. My lungs burned, my vision blurred, but I couldn't stop. If I stopped, I knew she'd be there. Finally, I stumbled into a wider street. Relief washed over me when I saw a man standing under a flickering streetlight. He was tall, wearing a long coat, his face hidden in shadow. I didn't care who he was. I ran straight toward him, gasping, "Please! Help me." He didn't move, didn't answer. As I drew closer, the light above him flickered once, twice, and then steadied. That's when I saw his face, or rather the lack of one. His skin was smooth, featureless, as though someone had erased every trace of humanity. I staggered back, bile rising in my throat. The faceless man tilted his head slowly, mimicking the woman from before. Then he raised his arm and pointed down the street, and there she was. The woman with the iron rod, limping toward me, dragging the metal against the ground, sparks flying as it struck stone. Her hair parted slightly as she moved, revealing eyes that glowed faintly in the dark. I ran again. My body screamed in protest, my muscles on fire, but I didn't stop. I don't remember how long I ran or where I went, but eventually, I saw the glow of my house in the distance. My knees nearly gave out in relief. I burst through the door, slamming it shut behind me, collapsing on the floor. My parents rushed over, panicked, but I couldn't explain. I just kept sobbing, whispering, "Don't let her in. Don't let her in." That night, I dreamed of scraping sounds outside my window. I woke up to find long, jagged scratches etched into the glass. In the days that followed, I tried to pretend it was all a nightmare, the hallucination of an overworked student. But the scratches remained, and sometimes when the house was quiet, I'd hear it again, that faint, dragging scrape circling the walls outside. A week later, I learned the story. Years ago, a woman had been attacked in those very alleys. A group of men cornered her, beat her, left her broken and bleeding. She dragged herself through the streets, clutching a piece of rebar she'd torn from a fence, trying to defend herself. She didn't make it. People say her spirit still roams the alleys, dragging that same piece of iron, searching for those who left her to die. I wish I could believe it was just a story, but every time I hear that scraping sound outside my window, I know she hasn't stopped searching. And one night, when the sound finally stops, it won't be because she's gone. It'll be because she's standing right behind me,